Here to go live. Hi, this is Mike Ehline with the Circle Legal Trust. We're here to talk about this HTTPS issue with Google. They're starting to give a little bit of a ranking boost to sites that have the security feature, and it makes a lot of sense because anyone with a WordPress site has been getting strong arm attacked that I know. The brute force attacks. I'm sure you've all been getting these things where they're doing password guessing and it's jamming up servers. A lot of times they're able to get in and they'll lay footer spam or the Hewler Trojan or something and try to redirect your site to advertorial sites or porn sites. So Google, I think, is they're saying, hey, if you implement this feature, this SSL security feature, we're going to give you a little bit of a ranking boost, and that kind of makes sense. So the problem is a lot of lawyers, we always want to take shortcuts. So a lot of people are going ahead and they're implementing this plugin on WordPress, which I did the other day. You think, oh, I'll just go to WordPress, I'll install this plugin, and boom, I'll have HTTPS and I'll have a secure website. Well, that's not how it works. I did it, my whole site crashed. Luckily, I had Andre Von Wick, he went into the htaccess and deleted that plugin and restored my site. And it's something I probably could have done too, but as a busy lawyer, it's a hassle to log into htaccess. You want to make sure you don't screw something up. So the first step is, if you are ever going to make changes to your site, make sure you have someone like an Andre or a William Rock or a Chris Dreyer who actually understands how to do this. Make sure you're not held hostage by an SEO company or person who's hardly ever accessible. It's okay to do things and to try to implement things, but you better make sure that you have a backup, someone who can be there to help you, who's not a full-time lawyer like yourself. Otherwise, you're going to get bogged down. So that being said, I do have William Rock here today, and he's been doing some research and some HOAs and stuff on this. This HTTPS, and I just want to kind of let him explain in his words, what it is, so you guys will understand it, and then we'll talk about how difficult it really is to implement, because it's not a simple plugin. There's a lot of things you got to worry about, from making sure your 301 redirects stay intact if you have any, and make sure if that you do proper redirects if you're doing this after it's implemented, if you don't currently even have any pages redirected. So there's a lot going on. Yeah, so go ahead, man. Give us a shout out and tell us what you think about all this.
Well, Michael, thanks for having me on the show. And guys, it's a big, huge topic, and I've been kind of diving deep into it with a lot of high-end technicians and trying to wrap my head around it with what Google's actually thinking. They do talk about this rank boost, and I think everybody's really focused on that rank boost opportunity versus even more. So with that,
You got a bunch of noise coming from Scruthy. You need out your mic.
I am off. I am on mute. I'm going to try again. Hold on.
Yeah, you got a lot going on. And then Robin, you too, man. You got a bunch of feedback coming on your mic. Froggy, if you can mute your mic. Sorry about that. We're all hearing this stuff.
This is the part of Hangouts that we all have to deal with. Right now I'm actually having to do my own setup. So I've always taught people how to do it, but not for myself. So I'm building my own show now. So I'll announce that later. But going back to the topics that I've been diving into, even before the SSL, I think that the big focus again is ranking. And I think it's a big, huge thing. Google announced, hey, we're going to give you a little plug for that. But how big is that plug? We don't know. But I think it's a good step in the right direction that Google's actually saying, hey, we're going to give you an extra little candy bar if you just do the SSL. Now, it goes back to your point, Michael, earlier about injection attacks and all these other things, but that doesn't really stop you from getting those. And SSL doesn't necessarily stop you from that. And that brings me back to all the way down to the server level. And a lot of people aren't really thinking about the server level. And if you look at the different types of installs of WordPress, and I know a lot of you guys are as attorneys and political, and there's a lot of people running on a WordPress site. However, what they've always forgot is you have a back-end admin that controls all of your site. And if you're in a coffee shop or whatever else, a lovely little hacker might be sitting and having coffee with you and enjoying the cookies that he's receiving. And what that means is that you've now had an opportunity to get hacked just by somebody sniffing the username and password. One, from a non-secure wireless connection, and two, because you didn't have an SSL installed for the back end of your administration of WordPress. Now, there's different layers of that. If you've installed it on your own servers, then you have all that. But then you also have others that have just installed it on WordPress.org or .com and have a subdomain. So they're actually a little bit more protected because it relies on the company at the server level.
So let me just cut you off really fast.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys may not understand this. There are some shared hosting services that no matter what you do, they're not going to implement the SSL on their end. And so no matter how secure your site is, they can still get in at the server level under certain situations. Is that a correct interpretation of what you just said?
Yeah, I think, well, it's somewhat. I think when you're hosting anywhere, it doesn't matter, GoDaddy, anybody else out there, you still have your own root access to your own hosting application. So your FTP, when you install WordPress, all the way down to the secure SSL, which basically is another layer of just encrypting the connection between one person and the next, which is one layer of security. So where I think Google is going to end up going is actually looking at even deeper. And I think that it's important that we all look at where our security is. We watch on the news daily of big companies getting attacked, but what we don't really hear is the little guys getting attacked either, as much as the big guys. But yet the little guys are actually getting attacked more, and people are getting away with attacking the little guy without the little guy knowing. And that's what scares me for the future of websites. And it doesn't matter if it's a WordPress installation, a Joomla, a Drupal, or even a private CMS, or even a straight basic HTML website that doesn't have an admin login. Now, even though that SSL is there, it's just one layer. It's just one layer in the actual security level. And with attorneys, I mean, a hacker is probably going to go after you guys pretty quick. And so being that you want to identify in WordPress first, so let's step away from the SSL and the attacks. Let's look at what we can do in our WordPress with plugins like security. Okay, security is going to basically allow you to see when you're being attacked and how many times and what IP, and it actually helps to protect a little bit of that. That goes another layer of security that most people forget about, and most web design companies are not going to pay attention to, nor an SEO company. But at the same level, it's protection of your company as a whole. We, as attorneys or business owners, we all secure our properties. I'm sure, Michael, your office is absolutely secure with alarms, video, everything else, or others will be. But we forget about the online security. That's the front door to your business online. And so getting to that mentality, not thinking of it as a ranking signal, but as an implementing the opportunity to maybe one day reap the benefits of a possible uplift in ranking. But I believe that it takes everything as a security as well as a business to be successful. If you're not doing your diligence to understand a little bit, you don't have to be an expert, but understand what you're paying for, and then also with the backups. Like you said, Michael, you had implemented a plugin that is known for what's called SSL looping. Okay, so SSL looping will also cause a lot of breaking of links. The list goes on and I'm really excited that your technician decided to go straight to the htaccess file versus a plugin, because now you're actually a lot more secure with your htaccess file, because nobody can. I mean, it's a lot more difficult for a hacker to get to that htaccess file. But at the same time, you're not relying on a plugin that may not be updated, may not be up, and then what happens a year from now when, oops, I got mixed. So when SSL changes, what happens then? When it gets more secure, I mean, because there's going to be different layers of SSL that you can apply, and that also goes back to attorneys. Are you doing e-commerce, or are you just doing simple transactions of collecting data from, a possible client? And that client is also community. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, that's what I heard too. That what I was reading is that, e-commerce sites really need the SSL more than somebody like an attorney who just has, just like a contact us type form. But luckily, we also have Joseph Moss here, who hopefully you and him can banter a little bit, because everything that you're saying I totally agree with. But come on, man, we want that ranking boost.
Well, it's like the link juice. Everybody's trying to actually pull off, and they've been drinking the Kool-Aid way too long, and they're still stuck in the old days, and they're not marketing for the future. So, I think that it's a great question. There's a lot of people that probably don't need SSL, right? But what doesn't? I mean, did you really need a security alarm in your office? Probably. It's just another layer of that security guard, but for online. And when you ask, I'm not e-commerce, but I'm actually collecting personal contact information from a possible client that has confidential information that's in that form, which could eventually be a violation down the road with, HIPAA, or, I mean, that's possible, but who knows what direction that could end up going in the future. But being there and securing, not just for the ranking, but for your clients. What can you do to secure them so that you're basically saying, hey, I'm gonna take the next level of effort and make sure that nobody actually intercepts this data for you. And so it's more kudos to the attorneys that do this versus, and not just attorneys, it could be anybody. I'm actually doing the same thing with other clients right now. We've always had SSL on the back end of the administration, stuff like that, but never on the front end. So that's kind of a weird transition that everybody's going, okay, well, how is this going to affect my rankings? How is this going to actually, is it going to kill my website? Am I going to be broken a lot? There's tools out there that I use, like, I'm not going to pitch, but SEMrush has a site auditor tool. And so right after you do the SSL, you can run the site auditor tool and see if things are broke without having just to look one at a time, because you're not going to see that at the top level. You're going to see, a broken link to an image that is now trying to force to an SSL. So those little tiny elements could definitely have an impact on your website, but you're not going to know it because you're busy as an attorney doing everything else. And I think that also goes back to making sure that you have somebody that knows enough that's not going to hurt you, and then you've been able to watch through the process, making sure everything is good, and then you go through maybe an audit and look at what else might be needing to be fixed. There might be even other things you can use to fix on your site, but improving the quality of the visitor experience is hands down something I've been pitching for a very long time.
Well, what does Joe have to say about any of this stuff?
Yeah, Joe, jump in, dude.
He's around. I'm just trying to get some. All
right, dogs.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get some different perspectives here. Because I understand everything that Rock is saying. Hey, we should have security anyways. The problem is if you have a WordPress site, I mean, it is a freaking nightmare to go ahead and implement this HTTPS feature. What I've been reading is that it's going to be major cost and expense. There's probably going to be a testing phase where you're going to find all these issues that arise. It could affect your ranking if you don't do all the redirects properly. So it could just become a complete nightmare, and it could be like a self-defeating kind of a thing, where here you are trying to implement this just because you want to get a little bit of a small percentage in ranking boost, when in reality you should probably be a little more focused on making the on-site experience better, the user experience better, that kind of a thing. So hopefully you guys can all hear me, because it doesn't even look like I'm broadcasting anymore. But okay. So does anybody have anything to say about this? Joseph, William, and anybody have any questions? Have you heard any nightmares yourselves about what's been going down with this whole thing?
I haven't heard any nightmares. I've heard the same thing you're kind of going through is basically implementations with big sites. If you got a small site, that's going to be pretty easy to do. That htaccess file, there's a lot of good information that John Mueller from Google has actually put out. There was, especially on when he first released the information, the comment thread is probably all the way to 500 on that one, and then so there was other ones started. But there's a lot of things that I've talked about on my wall. I post a lot, as you guys know. Sometimes it's annoying, but it's basically posting out to everything that communities all over the place. But at the same notion is it goes back to building a good quality site that visitors enjoy, and Google can then actually look at. I mean, they're looking at that signal. Are you when you're looking at your analytics, are they bouncing? Are they coming in from the search engine for a particular great query, but then when you're looking at that query in Webmaster Tools, and then you go back into analytics and say, oh wow, that query was great, but I've got 80–90% bounce. I wonder why. Do that. Ask yourself that question. So, well, if I was the visitor and I was looking for my services, is this the page that I really want them to go to? And if it is, let's improve that page for the experience to get a lower bounce rate. You get a lower bounce rate, you're going to get the love from the search engine, because they're going to actually put you back up in that search rankings because of your quality. It doesn't matter about, authorship is great, all these different things. There's so much confusing stuff on the web, guys. And I'm sure you guys are reading it left and right, and you've got so many different updates going on. It's pretty scary. And we have a lot more updates to go.
Well, William, all things being equal, let's say the user experience is there. You got sites A and B. Mm-hmm. User experience is there. The backlink profile is almost the same as far as the juice going to the site. It's all pretty much the same. Don't you think that HTTPS, just like site speed, is going to give you that little extra oomph to push you over your competitors?
I don't believe it would, because I think it's going to change even more so when people are thinking about. If we go back to the history of like 2001, 2002, I was using tools that would blow your guys' mind away to find links for high competitors, buying links. I had to learn everything I could about what link building really was and what it wasn't. But here's where I think the difference is going to be going forward. If you take a site and you're looking at a competitive landscape and say, okay, you've got, say you're using a tool that allows you to see right across and says, okay, here's my competitor, here's where I'm at. They have this many actual .com links, they have this many .org links, they are actually this many comments. So you've done your homework on their entire profile.
Same bounce rate, same user experience, all that. That's what I'm getting at. If all things are equal.
Okay. But step out of that mindset a little bit and go, what else are they doing different to still beat you?
Hey, I got a question along those lines. This is Seth.
Okay.
Because we saw this in day one. I sort of sent this out to the whole team, our developers, and said, hey, can we do this? And they came back and said, well, in theory you could do it, but you're essentially creating 301s for every single page on your site. to these new pages. Is that essentially the gig, right?
It depends on your setup. I mean, you can do a 301 at the root level, and it basically everything is going to automatically forward to the HTTPS.
That's my point.
But those other ones will go away.
Right. Some sort of a 301 redirect, which in theory has some sort of lost SEO value. You know, the SEO value of a site, according to Cuts, my understanding is slightly less after you've 301 redirected it.
That's going to go back into your canonical tags and just basically how your site architecture is laid out. I mean, there could be a lot of things that...
Well, that's my question. In a normal 301 situation, right, there's some sort of SEO breakage when you 301 something. It's not necessarily 100% SEO juice coming through. I started to struggle with the idea, would I want to take a chance that the breakage I'm going to get by doing with it, look, if it's canonical, it sounds like it would be about as good as anything. But is there any sort of breakage where, yes, there's an SEO boost to it, but if you're now 301 redirecting all of your pages, there's going to be some sort of loss or breakage. And yes, there's improvement, but there's going to be some potential loss.
Very good point.
There definitely could be some delay, right? Well, because it's going to be reading possibly duplicate content on Google before it re-indexes the old for the new.
Well, Google's clearly, and I don't want to misquote John Mueller here, but I'll even come out and ask him after the show, just trying to figure out what he thinks of this. We can work together on this one, but I am curious to find out, because I really haven't looked at the 301, I've looked at canonical and everything else, but as far as the loss, I don't believe that you're going to have that if it's just internal root. Now, if you're looking at 301ing all of your things from external to another, then that brings up a completely different issue, and that's been also talked about. So
what is the conventional wisdom? It's great to get an SEO boost by doing. We're not doing credit card transactions, most of us, on the websites. Which is the whole point of this setup. And I'm sort of sitting here like, yes, I want to do everything like Michael. I can do something where everything's equal and gives us a boost, but you're like, okay, there are X number of points boosting, but now you're going to get X number of points down for the 301 redirecting, which won't necessarily be perfect, and you're going to screw something up. Is it really worth it? Or if you were building a site from scratch, would you recommend doing it that way, since you wouldn't have any negative possible loss?
You got me. That's a technical question.
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
I don't want to misrepresent that one at all. Let me do some research and get back with you on that.
Joe's got something to add about this. Joe is saying in his comments that he believes that you'll lose about 20% of your equity with 301s. I saw a hangout with Cuts where he said you don't lose anything, but there's a temporary loss while there's duplicate content.
That's it, temporary. That was the word. And when you use the HTTPS, see, right now they gave us a year advance. And basically, in the past, when they come out with these type of warnings, you have about a year to really implement it, and then the signal strength that you get from the HTTPS will really be boosted. So right now, let's say out of a 1 to 100, 100 being max, using HTTPS could add, 5 to this, but a year from now, you might be looking at more like 15. So right now, the signal is little, but it's going to get much bigger, and they told us that already. Yeah. When you use 301s, you do lose a little bit of link equity in the beginning because Google has to recrawl and all this type of stuff. However, that usually pops right back up, and not using those 301s, you won't gain anything. And make sure you don't use 302s either, because you will lose there.
Is there any way of doing this where you're signaling to Google, hey, there's a 301 here, but we're doing it for a purpose you want? Is there any sort of Google Webmaster tools where they've allowed for?
Yes, in Google Webmaster Tools, you can set the preferred site to HTTPS instead of HTTP. And that's basically how Google says to apply this directive. Tell us you're switching over.
What about the internal pages?
The internal pages should usually be switched over. Typically, like in your 30 or HT access, your 301, you're going to redirect anything from www or HTTP to HTTPS, and that's where that directive comes. And then you set it in Google Webmaster Tools assuming you get your migration correct, and you should pop right back up a little bit more than where you were originally.
Has anybody seen this work yet?
I've implemented it on a couple sites, and we have some very large clients that are in the process of this right now also. Maybe you can add to this, William?
Yeah, I mean, we're actually doing a test with Barry Schwartz right now. He actually, the day that they announced it, he went live with his website, and I believe they ran into a few different things, but for the most part, he says it was pretty simple.
Yeah. Another thing
as far as ranking, he hasn't really seen anything. I mean, but he's also a news, on internet marketing, so who knows if those types of companies are also being.
I know you spoke a little bit earlier on having being on a shared server. I mean, just in general across the board, I would never recommend a shared server. Just go get a VPS or something of that sort. William, you probably have some guidance you might want to give on that. But basically, you've got to have a dedicated IP and stay as far away from shared servers as you can.
Yeah, and I actually had a lot of experience with the shared servers a long time ago because you know what? When I started out, that's all I could afford.
Yeah.
And so, since I've grown, I've worked with multiple data centers here in Kansas City for their marketing, and in that I also have some of the top VM servers, and I've found that basically having been hacked on GoDaddy. Yet I still have all my domains over there, but that's soon to be changed again because I'm actually moving. I actually moved one of my domains over to the beta test of Google Domains, and so I'm playing with that test right now, and I really like the interface. I like what I have control of, and I know that okay, maybe one day I'm going to use the Google DNS. There's all these different things that Google's put out there for businesses, but how do we use those in the smallest forms, and then also how do we use them at the biggest forms? But even if you look at a big data center, they're being attacked all the time because everybody's WordPress servers are in there.
Yeah, how do you guys view WP Engine? We've been very, very big on that recently.
Yeah, I use cPanel for a lot of my stuff. I like the open source. I like the control panel and everything else, but it's a hit and miss. I mean, it depends on what you can afford, and then you really need to do your due diligence to find, okay, if I am going to be on a shared server, where am I? What are the reviews? Have they been hacked? I mean, go out and look for, use the name of a company that you're hosting with, and then add hacked WordPress.
Let me back up for a second. There are two questions. Assuming you have a server for yourself, and your stuff is on it. My question is it the fact that it's shared, or the fact that it can be hacked? So if you put multiple sites of your own, which you're fine for Google knowing are together, do you have an issue with it from that point of view, or is it just an issue because you don't want the risk of being hacked?
Being on a shared platform opens up all sorts of different vulnerabilities as a whole to everybody on that.
I'm talking about from an SEO point of view, not from a downtown point of view.
Can you state the question again?
Yeah.
Sure, go ahead.
Can you state the question again?
Sure. What I was saying is, looking at it, assume that you control the sites on a server, so you don't have one site per server.
Mm-hmm.
You're not worried about other bad actors in there. Do you think there's a negative SEO perspective of not having one site per server, like having a mini server?
You don't need multiple servers. I mean, with a VM server, most of the hosting companies will give you like a cPanel and then your admin, so you can create your own multiple sites, and then each one of them has its own cPanel. And that's on one dedicated, you got a dedicated or a virtual box that you're paying for, which is within a side of a data center. Being different, I've tested both sides. I've got a company that couldn't afford to be on a virtual server, and I'm not going to be hosting my clients on a virtual server. I only have my own stuff on there. But at the same time, with that, you have a different vast variety of different clients. So say, for example, a small mom-and-pop pizza shop probably doesn't have a lot of money. They're not going to go to a dedicated VM. It's too expensive. So they're going to actually go with the cheapest hosting they can get. So could they rank? They did. They actually still rank, and they're on a dedicated box, or not a dedicated box, but a shared box. Is that risky? Yeah, but that's what they can afford at this point. But the disadvantage comes back to the security level, and you don't have control of that. Michael, great question. How much is a dedicated VM? It depends on where you're buying it from. I mean, you can also buy a dedicated VM that's worse than actually a shared environment, but you have to trust the company first. You have to know the company. I guess I don't normally name data centers publicly, but I guess two of them I would actually trust would be NetStandard and Admo.net. Both those data centers actually are one of the top leading they have some of the top leading security engineers behind their VMs, so it depends on what you're looking for with a VM, because you can go all the way from being a managed server where they do all the patches and updates, or you can have a VM hosted platform where everything is taken care of, and even where if you want to set up another WordPress site, they do it for you. So there's all sorts of different levels of service you can get. But I stay away from the dedicated servers, because dedicated versus VM gives you a lot more strength in scalability. So say you're a small firm now, but all of a sudden now you're like humongous and become super popular, and the load on your other server can't handle it. Then you have to move all that stuff away from one server to the next, versus a virtual server, VM. You can then transfer an entire server from one server without any downtime. Therefore, you have redundant backups. There's so many different advantages that you have going to a virtual cluster, and just being able to figure out who you trust is going to be the biggest piece, because everybody, it's like buying a candy bar. Everybody's selling it, but who's actually selling the right thing, and who's going to protect you as a company if something actually did happen? I hope that, I know it went a little long-winded there, but I think it's very important that you figure out from a company level what you're doing. I know sometimes it's a little pricey. Some of the VMs, Michael, I think are probably anywhere from $89 a month to some of them a lot higher. So it depends on how big it is, again, how much data storage. I use mine for data backup, so I've got 8 terabytes of data that's being synchronized. So, yeah.
Let me just cut in really quick, you guys. What my guys need at the Circle of Legal Trust is, for hopefully between all of you guys, or some of you guys, whatever, come up with some kind of a package where you sort of broker this for us and come up with a price, where we want to get set up with a virtual server that's got the bells and whistles, that's going to be able to update and do patches without us having to worry about it, that's got cPanel, easy to use, easy to add a WordPress site, just like it would be with HostGator, but our own, as well as the migration over to HTTPS. Come up with a package for a WordPress site, and do a site analysis. I mean, if we're using more subdomains as opposed to subfolders, it might cost more. I get that. But come up with a package price per attorney, so I can make an offering to these guys. Because what Joe said makes a lot of sense. In time, that little 1 to 5% boost, whatever it is going to go to 15, and it's going to get higher. So it's something that you want to think about implementing soon. And so I think everybody, like you say, should be on their own, either virtual or secured server that's theirs. And what I'm hearing right now, especially with all the attacks that I've had and the costs involved in cleaning up viruses and Trojans, it just makes sense. You're going to save money in the long run. So if you guys can come up with some kind of a package for these lawyers, that's the kind of stuff that we need. I've got a lot of lawyers that I represent that I try to help. And I want to make sure that I use guys like you who I can trust. That's the whole point of the Circle of Legal Trust. So if we can do that, I think that we can really, we can help you guys and you can help us. So it's a win-win situation for all of us.
And
Go ahead,
that's what I want to offer out there to you. Remember, we were talking a couple weeks ago about being able to do a site audit, and that offer that's on Circle Legal Trust community page still it's still there. I'd like to actually help those, basically, especially the ones that are worse off, that know they've got hit by panda or penguin or pigeon. Let me do a quick audit, and then at the same time we can even discuss doing the SSL or looking at your SSL too. But that's not the work I'm into, but I definitely want to help you guys out.
Yeah. We'll do this though, William. I mean, it's cool. I know there's a post somewhere on the Circle Legal Trust Hangout or whatever, the
community.
Or the community, right? But I mean, throw together, a 200 or 300 word blog post. Throw it up on the Circle Legal Trust website, the blog, and create a user profile for yourself so we can make you, a contributing member. And let's make this offering, because that's where they usually go, is the blog. They don't really look in the community. And let's get that out there, first of all, to get a site audit done. But most importantly, after the site audit, come up with, based upon a number, like based upon the amount of data on your site. If you have X amount of data, X amount of files, it's going to cost this much to do a complete migration to HTTPS. If it's just a basic with a subfolder, it's going to cost about this much. You don't have to be exact, but come close. Same with you, Joe. I mean, come up with some numbers, because I doubt that one guy is going to be able to handle all the work, because there's going to be a lot of lawyers, at least in my group, who are going to want to do this. Especially because we always look at the future, being Googlers, and hey, a 15% boost is a big deal a year from now. And if we don't get on it now, we're going to lose that, and some other lawyer is going to get our case. So we want to kind of have an idea of pretty close number of what it's going to take. We want to make a move now. We don't want to wait until it's we have to do it. We want to do it before we have to do it.
Yeah, I'll chat with some of the security engineers that I know, as well as the data centers, and we'll work something out for you guys.
Okay, well, great. That's really cool. That's the kind of stuff that what I like to do is sort of bring a fusion together of lawyers and people in the search community. And that's why these hangouts are so cool, because look, guys, there's no one else really doing this. All you guys, Seth, Shruti, Lathan, the guys who are here today, reach out to Joe, and reach out to William Rock. And I encourage you guys, if you want to write some blog posts, throw them up on the Circle Legal Trust site, and as long as they meet editorial requirements, I'll throw them up. Because I want to be able to offer stuff to these guys and get on the ball now. Being a jarhead and everything, I want to make it happen. Yesterday, let's do or die. That's the attitude that I have, and I think you guys should have that same attitude as lawyers, because we have a very short lifespan as litigators compared to regular people, and we're going to be leaving behind families and people to feed. And so I really encourage you guys to get this stuff squared away and put as much money away in savings as you can, because this is a very stressful job that we have. And I think, honestly, between William and Joe, if you guys can come up with some really cool ideas in the form of a blog post, come up with some ideas of rough estimates of what you think it'll cost, throw up your free site audit type of an offering, link back to your own website with a companion page so you can get some traffic to your site, no problem. Let's find a way to work together to help the guys in our group get that little competitive edge.
Absolutely.
Okay, and I'm seeing here Joe uses InterServer, and he usually sets up client on a virtual server, a VPS, right? That's a virtual server?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
The reason why I do that is because it keeps the shared hosting environment completely away, and it gives you full control. William has spoken a couple times about having cPanel. The beautiful thing about this is you have your own cPanel, but you can also put as many domains on there as you want, and as long as you give them each, as long as you purchase additional IPs for each site that you put on there, it keeps them well segregated. There's been many times where I'll do an audit on a site or something, and I'll see, okay, the sister sites on this is pornstar.a.com, and on an attorney they're sister sites in Google's eyes to that attorney site. It's not where you want to be. So there's little tiny things like that. And another thing is that I don't even think you can get an SSL certificate unless you have a dedicated IP address. And they will sniff your system. So basically, if you, let's say you have a shoddy hosting provider, and you go to buy, one of the advanced certificates, and I think it costs about $400. But William can, back me up on that or shoot me down about the price. But basically, if your system is open, they're going to tell you, and they're not going to give you that certificate. So it really is a really good idea to use a VPS or a hosted server solution. But the problem with that is cost. And typically for the attorney who has, maybe 5 or 6 sites and total of maybe 20,000 visits a month, it's really just not worth to go out there and get a co-located server or something of that sort. So I've pretty much stayed on the VPS side, a virtual private server. I mean, William, you might be able to add to that. Since I've been in that space, I haven't had any problems, so I haven't actually gone out. I don't use GoDaddy and that type of stuff. We do for domain names and for certificates occasionally, depending on the client, but in general, VPS has always, well, over the last 5 years, has been a very nice change that I moved into, and I haven't had any problems at all whatsoever with it.
Makes for a very less stressful day.
Amen.
Well, I got to tell you guys, all the lawyers in our group have been dealing with nonstop Hoyer Trojan attacks, paying thousands of dollars to get the viruses and the Trojans removed. So if you're telling me I can get a VPS for like $80 a month, I'm on it. And if I can get guys like Eric, Joe, and William to come up with a package price to convert our WordPress sites to HTTPS, that's a cottage industry for you guys right now. That's if I was an SEO guy, that's where I would be. Like William, I know what you're saying. There's other things we need to do to make our sites better. 100% agree. Other things we can do internally to make security better. 100% agree. But like Mueller said, over time, that signal, that ranking signal to have that secured site is going to grow. And heck, guys, if we can get this now, while Google's going through all their crazy Panda and the Penguin thing they're going to do pretty soon, I mean, we're probably going to lose ranking anyways when all this stuff happens. Might as well do it now while they're still doing all this crazy stuff and get it out of the way and prepare for the future, because we're not churn and burn here at the Circle Legal Trust. I mean, we want long-term success online. That's why we're deleting all of our backlinks and going bananas. We're trying to make sure we have a clean slate. So right now, honestly, I think that's where we need to be. And I'm glad that Eric showed. I'm glad that Eric showed up too, because I wanted to get his take on, is it worth it to turn to do this. I know we've had, Andre Von Wyck has been saying that he wants to get off of WordPress altogether and just go to HTML. I mean, so we're kind of dealing with that too. I mean, I don't know. I kind of wanted to get Eric's take on that. I mean, Andre Von Wyck is saying get off of WordPress altogether. I mean, go to HTML. Screw it. It's not going to be as easy to use, but less chance of vulnerabilities. So, that's the kind of thing I wanted to kind of find out from you.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things that really drives vulnerability is scale. In other words, people who implement viruses and things like that, they go after platforms that have lots of people on them. That's by itself a reason why WordPress is more vulnerable, because it's a bigger target. But don't get me wrong, there's other issues with WordPress and the way it's built and all that, but the reality is it makes it an attractive target. But usually, if you do a good job of staying up to date, you should be fine. But I mean, Stone Temple's site is on WordPress. And we did get hacked once last summer, not the summer we're in, but a year ago. and that was my fault because I hadn't kept it up to date. Unfortunately, it was a very simple hack, so I was able to resolve it without any, great hassle. But so yeah, I don't know. I'm not rushing off to some other platform myself, to tell you the truth.
Got it. So you think then, Eric, that doing a like what these gentlemen are saying, maybe switch over to a virtual server at the very least, get off of shared hosting, get yourself a
Yes.
unique IP, and switch over to the HTTPS. I mean, do you agree with me that sooner or later is better? And if so, do you have any ideas of what the rough cost would be for a typical lawyer site to make that move?
So, so I think you got some input from Joseph before on the cost of the VPS itself, right? And of course, there's all kinds of different packages for that. But first of all, moving to one and getting to a situation where you're on your own IP address and away from other people is a really good idea. There's definite benefits to that. I'm very much on board with that being the right direction to go. So now the question is, in terms of answering, the question you asked, Michael, how many pages are there on said typical lawyer site?
Well, I would say, for me, at least 1,000 pages. But for that's me. So we're talking 1,000 pages. But I also have set up subdomains for each city, so I can have a different template for that city. Put the separate Yelp links out for that city, so I'm not having all this noise where I'm trying to put it all on one page and putting them all together. I try to sort of break it down. So that's for me. Most of these guys probably have 500 pages, and they probably have subfolders. So I'm trying to get a high-end and low-end spectrum cost so I can make an offering to my members.
Yeah, no, understood. And I think excuse me, from a technical perspective, there's a couple of assumptions that we have to make. First of all, I mean, if you are in WordPress, then you got to assume that WordPress is already set up on that other domain for you, and there's issues of getting your database copied over and stuff like that. They're not major issues, but just somebody has to think through all of that. Somebody that is used to dealing with SQL databases, and it's pretty simple work for them. I mean, the rest of it is just really kind of copying other files over. So it's not a large technical challenge. From an SEO perspective, there's just A, making sure all of that goes well, and then B, doing the building a 301 redirect map from the old site to the new site. One thing that you want to do and you want to be careful about is, if you're not changing domain, there's no 301 redirect map. So then it's just flipping your DNS, wherever you registered the domain. I mean, all of this is pretty simple stuff, right? It's not really SEO stuff if you're just moving it over and not changing your domain in the process. So it's all very simple things. It's not something that we do as a service, but there are people who do it, and I can't imagine that it's more than I don't know, a few $1,000s or something like that.
Okay, and do you think that it's going to be more of a significant benefit to do that long term? I mean, do you agree with what these other guys are saying?
Yeah, no, you don't want to be on shared hosting.
Okay.
There's a lot of problems with shared hosting. From a pure SEO perspective, one of the problems is that you just you could have bad people sharing your IP address, and Google, can't tell that it's owned by a different person, they're doing things and they penalize you because of something somebody on the other same IP address is doing. And that's just not good.
Okay. Well, does anybody have any questions for our panel? You know, while we're all still here. Anybody? Jeff, Ruthie, Robin, Seth, anyone?
Eric, thank you so much for coming on the show, bud.
Sure. No, my pleasure. Michael mentioned it to me earlier, and I wanted to at least try to jump on for 15, 20 minutes or so, because you know, it sounded like you guys are going to have a really interesting discussion. So that's great.
It has been so far, and basically, you know, you've been studying a lot of this stuff too. So I've been hearing you talk about it in most of the webinar or HOAs and stuff. So thanks for spreading all the good news.
Well, hopefully it's good news.
Well, you know, I bug you when it's not.
Yeah, there you go. Somebody's got to do it.
All right. So any other questions in here? I mean, there's got to be more questions.
Yeah, well, I'm looking here. You know, it may be that I've answered most of the questions for these guys by getting answers from you, but you know what Joseph is saying here is, look, for a typical lawyer website, for a total transition, you're looking at between $12,000 to $2,000 to make this transition into SSL, but it's not going to include the actual hosting, which obviously, if you're already spending money to have your blog shared on one host and your website shared on another shared host and stuff like that, you're probably spending that much money anyways. You might as well go VPS, get it implemented. And then I guess the way you're going to find out the true cost is to have one of these gents do a site audit. And William Rock, this is going to be recorded for later, so just so you guys know, is offering a free site audit for our members, which I think is a brilliant idea. Everybody should have it done. And William, again, I encourage you to throw up a blog post on the Circle of Legal Trust talking about it. You know, give yourself a little bit of juice, a little promo, and I'll blast it to all my guys, and let's see if we can get you put you to work doing some of this stuff for these guys. I mean, I think we all
I'm not looking for work, guys, but what I am looking to do is help your community. I appreciate everything you guys help me out with, and shoot, you never know when you need an attorney. So
right.
I'll go ahead and post that up there for you and get that going, and then
yeah, it makes sense. And look, I get it that you're not necessarily looking for work, but I'm an Ayn Rander, so I think that you deserve it. If you're you earned it, you deserve it. I want to help promote you. I want to make sure that you get compensation for your gifts that God gave you, and I'm here to offer that platform for you guys. Now, Eric, just really quick, I know it's a little bit off topic, but since I have you here, I was reading an article that this latest rendition of Penguin that's coming, it may affect up to 15% of sites. And so I wanted to see if you agree with that, because that's pretty scary. Because when they said 1%, what they really meant is 100% of all sites on the first page. So that's a little frightening for me. What do you have to say, if anything?
Well, where did the 15% number come from?
It was from some blog post from some SEO expert in Australia that I was reading. I think actually this morning at about 3 a.m. as I was typing Google Penguin Update August 22nd. Is there one today? Is there one yesterday? Blah, blah, blah. And of course,
right, there you go.
So I'm just freaked out reading about it.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if they did anything that dramatic, to tell you the truth. I mean, you never know, but it's rare that you see updates that have that level of impact, at least in the way Google describes it. So that doesn't mean you shouldn't be scared, because Penguin penalties is scary, scary stuff. There is no doubt about it, and it's. I mean, the problem is we've had 5 updates in the history of the algorithm. It's over 2 years old. You get hit by it, it's anywhere between 6 and 12 months before you get a chance to recover. And if you miss the window, then it's 6 to 12 months before you get to try again.
Yeah, and I have a follow-up on this because I'm seeing a trend, Eric, and I wanted. I'm glad you guys are all here, and I know I'll let you go after that. I know you're probably busy, but I'm seeing a trend here of lawyer websites basically shedding all of their backlinks, and then maybe having 2 or 3 blogs that are their own blogs, even on the same server. Link, and they're becoming #1, and they have 1,000 pages, and they're all linking back to the blogs to their main site with exact match anchor. And everything that I'm reading is if someone links back to your site from one domain, you shouldn't have more than a couple of backlinks from one domain because it looks fishy to Penguin. And I'm just wondering if anybody has any theories about, with this next rendition of Penguin, do you think that that trend is going to be reversed, that all these sites that are #1 with just backlinks coming from their own blogs, they're all pretty much exact match, do you think that that's going to blow those sites out? Because that's what the only thing that's prevented me from copying them. Because I learned a long time ago, don't copy what your competitors are doing, because tomorrow Google's going to say that it's spam. But in the meantime, I go broke while they're getting all the cases I would have gotten. So it's kind of like a weird kind of like, oh my God, I don't want to lose my ranking. But then it's like, oh my God, I'm going bankrupt. Why don't I copy these guys? So what do you guys have to say about any of that?
Hey, Mike, can I cut in just for a second?
Absolutely.
Hey, you know what? Tackling the HTTPS, you have to go through some of the processes that will actually eliminate other SEO issues. So, for instance, as you're migrating, let's say you do your screaming frog crawl, you get your list of URLs, and you check all the pages that are indexed and all this kind of stuff to make sure your mapping's right. Well, at the same time, you can identify duplicate content, and link disparity, like what you were just talking about. 5,000 pages on your injury attorney blog that link to one page on your other car accident blog. So during this, maybe you should take the HTTP process of switching over to HTTPS and incorporate other issues that are most certainly hindering probably 90% of sites that I see. I'm sure William can absolutely back me up. Duplicate content is a massive issue. Canonical tags, there's all kinds of stuff that can be tackled during an audit. Will most certainly identify these issues, and then using the opportunity of switching over from HTTP to HTTPS to implement other things that the audit calls out. It's perfect timing. And one more thing about what you said. You mentioned earlier about focusing on, let's focus on best practice and forget about all these other things that everybody's jumping on this bandwagon. I agree with you 100%. Forget what everybody else is doing. Implement best practices, do what Google says to do, and use the opportunity of switching from HTTP to HTTPS to fix other issues on your site, which hopefully an audit would identify those issues. And then you can move forward. So the cost of actually switching to HTTPS may be a certain amount depending on client, but if you can tackle other issues and it only costs a little bit more because you're already in the process, that's the ideal time to do it. And just one more point that I want to point out here. Let's say hypothetically, just you get some astronomical number for a switch over. Let's say it costs $10,000 to do it, right? But you see an increase of say 7% in your ranking. Now, typically, in my experience and the attorneys I've worked with, a 10% increase equates to about 2 to 3 signed contracts per month. Now, the only way to value that is to be the attorney behind that. If it's a car accident, it might be $5,000. But if it's a wrongful death, it could be, over $1 million, whatever. So the value of those cases, if you can line those up, in other words, if you say, okay, if I do this, I'm going to get about a 10% increase or 7%, which equates to about 2 signed contracts per month. That might not sound very much, but when you put the numbers behind it, that's when it starts really adding up. And you have to remember that even if you switch over, it could be, 2 to 3 months before you see the change. Actually, I wrote a post on it. It's usually about 6 to 9 months before you really start seeing benefits. But an audit is the best place to start because it identifies the issues, and then you can tackle more than one bird with the same stone.
Got it. Well, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, absolutely. Robin has to go. Good seeing you, Robin. And I noticed here, Joe, you said that it's a huge mistake to shed backlinks, but I have since like a month prior, 1 month prior to the release of the April 2012 Penguin, I got hit with like 5,000 exact match anchors from like an X-Rumor attack.
Right.
It's almost like somebody inside of the company kind of let the cat out of the bag that there's going to be an update coming soon, and if you want to knock your competitors out, now's the time to do it, kind of a thing.
Yeah, Google just posted on that, and they showed how to do this, but in every single case, I mean every case, the majority of the time, just unless you can clearly identify a porn site or something of that sort, I mean, I would really stay away from that disavow tool unless you absolutely know exactly what you're doing. I have seen this with clients that are massive, and they go and they'll execute a whole bunch of disavows, and then 3 months later they start seeing their SERP drops, and they're like, what's happening? What's happening? Well, it took 3 months for Google to recrawl those sites and devalue those links, and next thing you know, 6 months later, you're in the dumps, and you don't know why. And the reason why most likely can be tied exactly back to your disavow 6 months prior or 3 months prior.
And that's the scary thing, Joe, because the whole scare with all the attorneys I know, and Penguin in particular, is that if you have two exact match anchors from two different sites, for example, that appears to be a sign that you're gaming Google. Even though most of us don't really have any control over it, some of us do, and so Google just assumes that we did it.
And on that point, to elaborate on what you just said, I would say the majority of cases, almost every case, it's better to let Google decide if that backlink is good or bad for you, unless it is a porn site or clearly toxic, as if it has a malicious executables on it or something of that sort. So
great point, Joseph. I think Eric wanted to jump in too, and then I want to jump in after that. That's okay.
Go for it.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, I have a little bit of a different viewpoint on this. I mean, in my view of things, if first of all, you got to segregate. If you currently don't have a penalty, then dealing with your worst, say, 10% of links in one fashion or another makes a lot of sense to me. And by the way, including using the disavow. And we actually work people through that. And the great majority of the times, of course, we're quite careful about how we use it. We don't actually see any ranking impact. But the challenge is if you have...
What do you mean by being quite careful in using it? How do you use disavow carefully versus non-carefully?
Yeah, well, this is where I completely agree with Joe, right? Which is that you be very careful about using it, and if you don't know what you're doing, then you probably shouldn't be using it, because I mean, really, what you want to get to is you want to identify links that you knew if you were sitting in front of Matt Cutts, if he was no longer on a sabbatical, and he would just say, "This is bad stuff." To me, if you know it's bad stuff, then I would try to get it cleaned out, because getting hit by Penguin, as I said earlier, is going to result in at least a half year before you have the chance, your first chance to recover. So I would take some short-term ranking risk, which I can always address by getting new quality links and putting a good quality link program together, and take that longer term risk off the table, because Penguin is such a punitive algorithm. So, but again, agreeing with Joe here, you have to be very careful that you're not pulling links out that that you don't need to, and using it the right way. And Michael, I want to go back to one other thing that you said earlier too. You were talking about attorneys having separate sites that they put blogs on, and drove links back to their main site, and that was helping them rank.
Well, Eric, a caveat, not only are they doing that, but they're deleting their entire backlinks profile from almost every other site, and only have 1 or 2 blogs with thousands of pages linking back to various child pages on their site with exact match anchors. And they're absolutely kicking everyone's ass here in LA by doing that. And it's just blowing my mind, why didn't Penguin take these guys out?
Wait, say that again. What is helping them? What is helping them kick everybody's ass?
They're deleting all the backlinks to their sites, pretty much.
Oh wow! I can show cases that are opposite.
Yeah, and what they're doing is they're building 1 or 2 very powerful legal blogs. It looks like they're building X-Rumor links to those blogs themselves, adding a lot of good Panda quality content to those blogs, and linking back to their main firm website, child and home pages, and they're absolutely blowing it up. I mean, the two
right. But the way to think about this, Michael, is it gets when something is too artificial, right? Then it won't last. Okay, and creating your own blog you know, using that as the tool to get you rankings by linking back to yourself with rich anchor text. That's a form of voting for yourself, right? And while links, in some sense, act like an election, general popular elections, you can vote for yourself, not in the world of links, not as far as Google is concerned. They do not want you to be able to vote for yourself. That's why press releases don't work, and that's why in the long run what they're doing won't work. And that's why you were so smart, Michael, to not go copy them.
Well, I learned my lesson. You guys probably remember me from Google Local when I didn't know what I was doing, and I just copied the guy who was beating everyone. This is before they had any spam policies. And I had no idea what spam was for local. We were just, typing in best Los Angeles attorney dog bite motorcycle blah 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 blah, and we'd be #1. And you could create 50 listings for the same address, and then I got hammered and was suspended. Did my big thing with Carter Maslon and Diane Westgate. Actually became friends with these guys as a result of this experience. And so ever since then, I'm terrified to copy what anyone's doing. And I'm just warning all you other attorneys who think that there is a shortcut. I just posted 2 links in the sidebar, 2 websites that are doing exactly what I've been reading Matt Cutts say you're not supposed to do. And they're absolutely killing it in Los Angeles. The Los Angeles car accident attorneys in general, all the top terms. And as you look at their backlinks profile, there's a common theme. They've deleted almost all of the backlinks from directories that were exact match and garbage, and they've started building exact match anchors with their own blogs. And a lot of times these blogs aren't even on separate C classes. They're on the same server, and they're just killing it. They're cleaning up. But what has always bummed me out, you guys, is this: that as soon as they get blown out, the next spammer takes their place. And I'm still left at the bottom of page 1. It just seems like you guys always talk about long-term success, but how is there ever long-term success when the next spammer just takes their slot and I'm still going broke? And so it's really, really kind of scary for me. It's like it kind of makes me want to do what they're doing, because the guys who are doing the churn and burn, they'll change their law firm name, they'll 301 redirect their old domain, and they're back up to #1 in a few weeks. And it's just really frustrating. It's almost like I need to see a psychiatrist to be able to work through these problems.
Well, Michael, I feel your frustration because I hear this in my meetings with a few attorneys that I work with right now. And my challenge right now is, can I get an attorney out of the bad ranking signal? And it's not really a big client. It's basically just more of, hey, can William do this? And if he can, how do I replicate it? And what I've found is, yeah, they came to me before with, comment spam, just link stuff. I mean, everything on their backlink profile was completely toxic. I know about the disavow tool, but I don't trust the disavow tool in certain regards, even though it's getting better. And the only reason I say that is because I have watched a client, a very big client, that came to me that lost over 20,000 visitors a day in 2011, and he was destroyed by both Panda, Penguin, and anything else that attacked him. And basically, he was able to finally start recovering back to where we're at now. But it didn't take just getting rid of the links. It took getting rid of the article content, got rid of actually the links that were bad that he knew he paid for through Fiverr and wherever else he bought links. But he saw the same thing back in the day. 2000. He's been in the industry since 1998, and with that comes all the different tactics that came along with the industry. Everybody tried to do this, and then they figured out this works, or local works, or links do this, or article spinning do this. But then what they're finding out is it doesn't work that way anymore. But then they realize, oh, I have actually spent thousands and thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars in certain cases to get to those ranks that now they're gone. Now I've got to actually spend another 100 grand or whatever to get rid of these links, because now the industry is basically saying, hey, you want your links gone? We'll charge you for it. So it's a whole different animal with the links. But I think that my take on Penguin 3.0 or Penguin 4.0 is it's already. I mean, everybody seems to talk about it's iteration of rolling it out, but then you look at like even Panda rolls all the time now. So I've actually seen with the client I just mentioned, most clients I've seen do this, as they're filtering out that bad stuff and focusing on good things, the visitor experience, like I talked about earlier, with even after you've cleaned this up, look at your bounce rate. Those words that are coming in are super important. If they're getting 80%, 90% bounce, why? Can I improve that page experience for the visitors and lower that page bounce ratio? Just simple things like that. You reduce the opportunity for even Panda.
I agree with that 100%. It just the problem is right now though is you want them to click on your site. And they don't click on your site if you don't rank. And the problem that I'm seeing is a pattern in Los Angeles, which is by far the most competitive personal injury attorney market in the world. Yeah. And I'm seeing a pattern where these guys are just building a blog, great content on the blog, so it's Panda quality content, but they're linking massively back to their main site, and their main site is destroying everybody. And I'm just like scratching my head because this is exactly what Google says not to do. Even Matt Cutts says it's okay to have a couple of blogs that are your own. It's okay to even link back to follow. One of his Hangouts said maybe 5 blogs at the most, and anything more than that is suspicious. But I think what he meant is that, yeah, go ahead and have a branded anchor, maybe on the home page, maybe in the sidebar, a branded anchor indicating linking back to the main site. I don't think he meant link back to your main site with money terms, in every money term under the sun. And if you look at the 2 examples I sent you in the sidebar, you'll see that that's exactly what those 2 attorney websites are doing. And it's like, oh my God, here I am doing everything Matt Cutts says to do, and I'm at the bottom of page 1 now. Before I was at the top, but I'm so scared about the next Penguin update, I'm just stuck at the bottom going broke and living off my savings. While these guys are absolutely making a fortune using these, what I think are the tactics that Google says not to use. And so I wanted to find out, what do you guys think about that? I mean, is this, okay, thanks, Eric, for coming by. Eric, do you think that sites like this, just really quick, are going to get penalized in the next update, or do you think they're going to skate?
It's always a bit of a crapshoot. I mean, the thing to realize is that Google has the things that they want you to do, And then Google has a different level of ability to enforce that. And there's a gap, and there's always a gap. So whenever you do things that Google doesn't want you to do and it works for you, you might make some money for it on it for a while, and then eventually Google will come crawling or calling. But the problem is it could be 2 years from now. You don't know. You don't know when it will happen, and you have to decide whether you want to take that risk or not. And have your own churn and burn kind of mentality, which is it's a tough situation. But the other way to look at it, Michael, is can you take your own kind of content marketing strategy, link building strategy to a level where you beat them even though they cheat? Because these guys with their blogs, well, they have one site or a couple of sites linking to themselves with rich anchor text. It's not a lot of juice, right? So you kind of have.
But they're building links to those blogs.
Yeah, no, I understand what they're doing, but
yeah.
The idea is to find because eventually they will get hit, and if you just keep working on building what you have and it's growing and growing, and then bestattorney.com gets flushed and he comes with a new site, maybe he gets in front of you again, so you keep growing and growing, and that site gets flushed. Well, now he can't get in front of you anymore. It's not an easy story to tell, I get that, but if you take the long road and are very persistent at it, you can build to a place that their churn and burn tactic won't get in front of you.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, guys. I know it went over. Thanks, Eric, for coming by, and thanks big time, William. I really appreciate your offer to do a site audit. It means a lot to me because I really do want to help these guys out. I mean, some of these guys link to me, so obviously it behooves me to make sure they all have nice sites.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's the least they can do, guys. I mean, that's you guys had some really good information being passed out on the site, and I really appreciate reading a lot of that too. And participating in Hangouts with your group like this is helping not just you but everybody else. And that goes back to even the show that I'm launching, which is called the Zoo, the Google Zoo, and that's going to be talking about all the things we talked about today.
Terrific. All right. Well, look, I'll be looking out for if you want to do a cool little blog post about your offering for me to throw up there. I mean, I'll definitely help you link back to your social profiles, whatever you want to do, get a little traffic out of that, and let's plan on having another HOA where maybe we actually have you come back with the results of an audit that you did on a site for one of the members. Because that way, the other members would be like, "Oh my God, really?" Blah, 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 and then we get a little bit of an interest. And
I'll even do something better if they want to actually say, "Hey, say they have been hit by certain penalties, and they want to actually do a live audit. Why don't we just do a complete live audit, and I go through and show you the tools that I'm using to do this audit?"
That sounds terrific. Why don't we set up a hangout for next week where we do that? You can do it on my site, or if you want to do it on one of Seth's sites, whatever. I don't care.
Wherever I can help, guys.
Okay, great. Does anybody have any questions for William before we wrap this up? Okay. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and stop the broadcast. This has been another phenomenal edition of the Circle of Legal Trust HOA. And this was about HTTPS, and we overlapped a little bit into Penguin. We're all scared about. Hopefully we'll see what happens here. And have a terrific weekend, guys. It's great to be alive. Talk to you soon.